Okay, everyone. Welcome to this multi-locational meeting of the Cabinet held at Penalta House and via Microsoft Teams on Wednesday the 18th of February 2026 at 1 p.m. to consider matters contained within the following agenda. The meeting will be live streamed and a recording made available to view via the Council's website, except for discussions involving confidential or exempt items. Therefore, the images and the audio of those individuals present and or speaking will be publicly available to view via the recording on the Council website www.caerphilly.gov.uk. Okay, first of all is to receive apologies for absence. Councillor Elaine Forehead from the Cabinet, who is absent today. Any officers? And Councillor George is online, as well as Councillor Sheen. So, no more apologies? No? Okay, great. Okay then, number 2, declarations of interest. Councillors and officers are reminded of their personal responsibility to declare any personal and or prejudicial interests in respect of any item of business on the agenda in accordance with the Local Government Act 2000, the Council's Constitution and the Code of Conduct for both councillors and officers. Any declarations of interest at all? No? Okay. We go on to agenda item 3. That's the special Cabinet held on the 12th of January 2026. And I'll go through these in page order. Page 1, 2, 3, 4. Somebody prepared to move to the true record? Moved and seconded. Okay, show of hands. Agreement? Okay, fine. Agenda item 4, Cabinet held on the 21st of January 2026. Again, page 5 and 6. Somebody prepared to move again? Councillor Andrews and Councillor Philippa Leonard. All those in favour? Okay. And Cabinet as trustees of Blackwood Miners Institute held on the 21st of January 2026, pages 7, 8, 9 and 10. Again, somebody prepared to move for the true record. Councillor Stenner. Second, Councillor Morgan. All those in favour? Okay, thank you. Okay, to note the following Cabinet Forward Work Programme, pages 11 to 14. Any amendments or any suggestions from Cabinet about any changes to the Forward Work Programme? No? In that case, somebody prepared to move?
Just for noting.
For noting?
Yeah, just for noting.
Just for noting, no amendments to that. Okay, fine. Okay, now to our first item, main item of the agenda is the Housing Revenue Account Business Plan 2026-27. And we have, who's going to introduce the board? Chris and Leslie?
I thought Councillor.
Of course, yeah, sorry. Apologies. Sorry, Shane. It's not because you're not in the room, honestly. No, Councillor Shane Cook, sorry.
Thank you, Leader. The HRA Business Plan is an annual requirement from Welsh Government as part of the annual submission of the Major Repairs Allowance Grant application. The business plan is a 30-year plan ensuring the effective long-term management and maintenance of the Council's housing stock. It is essentially a financial forecast reliant on key assumptions which identifies the resources and funding required to meet, for instance, WHQS requirements and building new council homes. The business plan relies on key assumptions to remain viable, and in recent years this has become increasingly volatile due to the COVID-19 pandemic, Brexit and increases in inflation. Therefore, Leader, I would like to move the recommendation of 3.1, the Cabinet approve the 2026-27 Housing Business Plan and its submission to Welsh Government by the 31st of March 2026.
Shane. Councillor Stenner, you'd like to second?
Yeah, I'll second this report, and I also got a question as well, please. So, what impact has inflation had and increase in the cost of materials had on the HRA business?
Okay, yeah.
Well, we're all aware of the volatility of inflation in recent years, and of course this has had an impact on the HRA. Cabinet will recall from the rent increase report that was presented in December that we had a higher rent increase 26-27 than we forecasted in the previous year's plan. We forecasted 3.4% in rent, and we actually uplifted it by 4.3%, so that was an increase of 0.9%. That meant we were able to forecast about £540,000 of additional income for our rent in 26-27. Higher inflation can be good from that point of view. However, inflation impacts on costs as well as income. And because the rate of inflation for materials is higher than CPI, there is also a projected increase in costs of about £1.2 million. So therefore, it was a net reduction of about £735k for the HRA in 26-27. The new 10-year rent settlement, which tracks CPI, does give more certainty, but until social landlords are given more autonomy on rent setting to manage their business plans so we can improve our mitigation against inflation, there is always that possibility of an inflationary deficit, unfortunately. Obviously, we have options to consider around inflation volatility, which would include managing efficiencies, reducing costs where necessary, but depending on the impact, could also mean reprofiling capital programmes. In worst case scenarios, we can actually stop a programme or stop new build, for example. Unfortunately, we are unable to maximise income any more than the rent policy allows, so we can't gain any more income. So increasing rent to cover any gaps is not an option to us. Then we would look at increased borrowing, and we are now at that stage within the business plan where inflation on the cost of living is now showing a real impact. And you'll note from the report that we are dependent on significant amounts of borrowing year on year. At this stage, however, the business plan still remains viable. We also built in the plan a cushion, if you like, for material costs, which allows for a 1% increase above forecasted inflation for the next 3 years because of the volatility we've had in the past. And also one of Welsh Government requests as part of the business plan is to stress test some of the key drivers in the business plan. And you'll note in the report that we have tested several areas that rely on inflation, namely rent increase and material costs, where we tested an increase on forecasted inflation. All of these tests require an increase in borrowing, unfortunately, but they still remain viable within the business plan, and it doesn't impact on the borrowing cap for 26.
Okay, can I just have a quick follow-up on that? Just obviously, the headline rate of inflation has been released today. I understand 3%. Not 3%, is it? Let's be honest. When it's materials, but how much kind of above that standard rate of inflation would we be running at with sort of materials? You said that about the £540,000 received in additional income through that slightly higher rents increase. I think you said about £1.2 million, so net 700,000. So are we looking at double-digit inflation kind of thing like that with materials? Is it around about that?
In the report, it was based on 3.8% of RPI, because it's based on RPI rather than CPI, because most of the contracts are tracked from RPI inflation. So that's why it's slightly higher than CPI. So in December, that went up again to 4.2. So it has tracked, but it has come down. I think today's forecast for RPI was 3.8. So it is coming back down again.
Right.
And CPI is following the same trajectory.
Okay. But still above the reported 3%. Yeah. Okay. Councillor Leonard, do you want to come in?
Thank you. I've got two for me.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. As of December 2025, the majority of universal credit accounts have been migrated. Are we monitoring the impact, such as an increase in arrears?
Yes, we are monitoring the impact of the transition from housing benefit to universal credit. We previously modelled in the last business plan an increase of about 0.5% in bad debt provision. However, now that the majority have transitioned over, that impact on arrears has been slightly less than predicted. So that's resulted in the bad debt provision being reduced slightly to about 0.28%, which is about 160. We will continue to monitor this and work with our tenants to address the impact of universal credit. But we also recognise the need to strike the right balance between rent recovery and sustaining and supporting tenants, which we have been very successful at. But there is a focus on this shift now within the rent team. The assumption is volatile and has therefore been included again as part of the sensitivity in the plan. And all we can do at this stage is continue to monitor it as we prepare to shift to the rent recovery stage, so then we'll know then what the impact is.
And How is the council preparing to meet the new WHQS 2023 requirements, particularly around decarbonisation, and thermal efficiency improvements?
At the moment, we are doing our stock condition surveys on all our properties. We're around 50% of the way through, and they're going to continue for the rest of this financial year, or sorry, 26-27. This has given us some of the best asset data that we've probably ever had as an authority, which includes thermal properties and EPC ratings of all of them, which all goes towards the decarbonisation agenda within WHQS. On top of that, we've got software from Intelligent Energy Sava, which are then allowing us to complete our target energy pathways. So by March 27, we should have target energy pathways for all of our properties. We'll have all that data, and then obviously by 2030 we'll be working to get them up to SAP 75, and then we've got another target further down the line to get them to the A rated as well. But we are on target for all of them.
That's 10,000 properties. Are we looking at 10,000?
10,862.
Give or take.
It's changing all the time, but that's the figure I got in my head at the moment. Obviously, there's a projection as well, which we have to do, and we haven't completed that projection. So until we complete the target energy pathways by March, that will give us probably a huge figure of what the costs are going to be for that as well.
Just on that, Chris, I mean, it has been stated about the stringent WHQS and upgrading properties, decarbonisation. The trajectory is going more and more and more and more, in terms of making the properties as best as possible. Obviously, that comes with a huge cost, and I imagine a significant time factor as well. Obviously, the more work you've got to do. But we are bound by Welsh Government WHQS. There's no way of any kind of veto or anything out of that. So my point is, I mean, that all takes time, and takes a lot of capital, to invest in it. So is it just, you've got any comment on that about the time pressures and the amount of work we have to do more and more and more?
We are aware of the time pressures, especially turning voids round when they come to us and the vacant homes, but we are putting them back at a gold standard. The optimum time to do the works is when the house is vacant, because trying to do some of the works to get it to WHQS when the residents are in or living in a home is quite difficult, so we do take that opportunity. It's a different approach to some other authorities, but it does pay dividends in the long run. So you're doing all these homes, so in the future they are done, so next time they become vacant or are a void again, there's very little to do. It's just lock changes, and we are having some already that have gone through the process. You're able to flip them and turn them around in a very quick time, because all the works have been done previously.
Yeah. Absolutely.
It is all modelled within the business plan and the borrowing we've got as well.
Yeah. Any further questions? Okay, then we go to the vote.
Thanks, Leader. Members, there's a poll before you any moment, I hope. Could you please cast your vote on the single recommendation report that you've just heard about, please? And that recommendation rather, is unanimously approved. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you, Rob. Thanks, officers.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll now move on to agenda item 8. That's the whole authority revenue budget monitoring report quarter 3. This time I will go to the cabinet member, Councillor Leonard Stella.
Thank you, Leader. This report provides details of the projected whole authority revenue budget expenditure for the 25-26 financial year as of the 31st of December 25. Details are provided of the 25-26 projected revenue budget position based on information as of the 31st of December. Commentary is also provided throughout the report on the most significant variations against budget. The recommendations are at 3.1 of the report that Cabinet notes the content of the report and approves the Q3 budget requirements listed in Appendix 3 to capture and crystallise the savings against the 25-26 in-year transformation savings. I move.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Stenner and Councillor Carol Andrews.
Yeah, I'm very happy to move, Leader, but I've got a question.
Yeah.
To ask it now?
Follow, yeah.
Okay, so we are still projecting overspends, albeit they are lower than Q2. What are we doing to combat any overspends?
Okay. Leanne and Sarah, welcome. Okay, so it's yourself, Leanne, want to answer this one, yeah?
Yeah, so like I say, we have seen an improvement. So it's an improvement of 1.779 million from Q2, so we're going in the right direction. Basically we do is obviously we have our detailed budget monitoring, so that goes to our SMTs and our leadership, and that includes tracking all the savings in the position, so we've got a good oversight and challenge. Some of the movements are out of our control, so some of the movements this month we see particularly going the wrong way are where we've had increases in demand, so in children's services, replacements and on home to school transport. In all cases, services are asked to look at mitigating savings, they're asked to reprofile spend that isn't necessary, to bring budgets back in online. We also look to maximise grants and one-off funding. And then we've got our kind of corporate ones that we've got in place. So under transformation, we've got our vacancy management board where we're scrutinising all vacancies. We've got our transformation programme so we can bring forward savings. And obviously it's having that key messaging at Managers Network. So I was there just a couple of weeks ago telling them, how important it was that they manage within their budgets and take mitigating actions.
Thank you.
Councillor Morgan.
Thanks, Leader. Which service areas are experiencing the greatest budget variances and why?
I think the biggest one we've had at the moment are obviously home to school transport. That's very much linked to additional learning needs. Temporary accommodation, we've seen a significant increase there, both in terms of demand and price. So they would be the biggest overspending areas, I would say. On the flip side, you've got a lot of underspend where we've been able to bring forward staff savings from the vacancy management work we've been doing. We've had some one-off funding in terms of income and grants, maximising grants this year.
Just a comment on home to school transport, it's been mentioned twice now. We took the right decision, a brave decision, but a costly decision, if you want to look at it like that, to retain our existing school provision. I suppose for us as Cabinet and councillors, it's always balancing, the pressures, which undoubtedly, from a finance point of view, we would like to see eased, no doubt, with the reality of life for children. And when we hear about school attendances perhaps being impacted by changes in transport, that's the last thing we want to be seeing, is children not going to school. So whilst this is a financial report, obviously it's not without its emotion as well when it comes to those issues where us as councillors get lobbied about. It's realistic, and there's a realistic pressure on the council, but it's a conscious decision that we've made in terms of home to school transport to retain the level, the generous level, if you want to put it like that we have here in Caerphilly. But that's more of a sort of comment than a question. But as you've mentioned it twice, Leanne, obviously it is a big pressure, same as temporary accommodation as well, that I know Councillor Cook is keen to address. But that's my two penneth in terms of that. Are there any further questions at all? Councillor Leonard? Yeah.
Are there any services relying heavily on temporary or time-limited external funding?
So in terms of our grants, normally if we know that they're one-off, we wouldn't build them into the base. And we would look to cover off those eventually, so we'd do fixed terms post and stuff like that. In terms of grants that are recurring, we do build them into a base at a level, and then we have to manage that when allocations change. So services, particularly like education and social services, would be impacted by changes in grants from Welsh Government. The biggest one we've had this year with the change would obviously be our SPF funding. So we've got they're not replacements, but the new programmes that have come forward is the Local Growth Fund and the community focused ones for Pride in Place. But overall, we will have to reduce staff levels down for the change in programmes because it is more capital focused.
Second part of that question was that, are there any risks associated with the grant conditions, clawbacks or uncertainty?
Yeah, so we make sure we always comply with grant conditions. Obviously, it is always a risk, but it's about having, making sure that we're complying with the conditions, making sure we're allocating funding appropriately. So we haven't had any cases where we've had to repay back or claw back at present.
Councillor Leonard. Any further questions at all? No? Rob? To go to the vote?
Leader. Members, if you could please cast your vote on the poll before you on the two recommendations within the report. And those recommendations are unanimously approved. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Rob. Agenda item 9, the Quarter 3 Capital Programme Monitoring Report. So, Leonard Stenner.
Thank you, Leader. So this report provides Cabinet with projected capital expenditure for the 25-26 financial year and to advise of the forecast variance. The report provides details of actual and projected capital expenditure based on information available as of the 31st of December. Recommendations are 3.1 to 3.1.2 of the report, and they are to note the content of the report, endorse the recommendation to Cabinet. The Cabinet approves the contingency funding allocation of £690,000, comprising £639,000 from the Extended Producer Responsibility Grant and £50,000 from unallocated core capital funding to support Phase 2 maintenance and improvement works at the Full Moon Recycling and Waste Transfer Station, and this will allow the work contract to be awarded by the end of February 26 ahead of the Welsh Government grant decision. If the grant bid is unsuccessful, the contingency funding will be used in its place. This report was presented to Corporate and Regeneration Scrutiny yesterday evening, where it was supported. Move.
Councillor Stenner.
Be the second, and
Yes.
what's the question, Leader?
Councillor Chris Morgan, second. Ask a question yet?
Are all projects broadly on track to deliver against the approved capital programme for 25-26?
So you'll see from the report we have done £46 million worth of slippage between quarter 2 and quarter 3. So this is where we reprofiled budgets to say that we are going to spend as much this year into next year, which is why, other than the HRA, most of the schemes are reporting broadly in line with their new budgets. The reason for those slippages is generally on our big capital schemes. So, for example, like the waste strategy, we put the profile in at the outline business case. We're now at full business case, so the profile's been amended to reflect those changes. The same with our new schools, where we've had significant increases in costs and we've had to go back for additional funding or do value engineering. So there have been changes. So I think in terms of, we are in track with the revised budget, but there has been significant slippage in the year. And what I'd like to do is, in next year's report, I want to make sure that's clearly set out for you in appendix, with an explanation as to why we've changed the profiles, and also tell you at what major stage each project's at, so that you can see that, okay, it's changed because it was an outline business case or full business case, just to give you a better overview of the whole programme.
Councillor Andrews.
You've already mentioned slippage there, Leanne, and it's key. You identify key slippage risk areas in 5.1.7. What else are we trying to do to prevent slippage then?
So the main thing is making sure we've got accurate spending profiles in the first year. So we're working with budget managers and we're making sure they're trained so that they realise, instead of putting the budget all in one year, that they spread it out over the year that it's going to be spent in. And obviously that budget management is key to make sure we stay on track, have the key milestones. We've had the place shaping board this year, but next year we're going to set up a capital strategy board, so that we take a broader look at it and we're able to kind of swap funding projects out, so we can have pipeline projects ready that we can roll in and roll out for our rolling programmes. But ultimately, on these big capital investment ones like the new schools, it's normal for people to have these slippages when you hit problems or when you get delays or tendering comes in higher. But it's all about making sure we're transparent with our reporting and we know about it as soon as possible.
Thank you.
Okay. No further questions then? No? Okay. Rob, we'll go to the vote.
Thanks, Leader. Members, if you could please vote on the recommendations on the report that you read and heard about, please. Thank you. And the recommendations are unanimously approved, Leader. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you, Rob. Okay. Agenda item 10, review of the corporate plan. So Leonard Stanner.
Again, Leader. This report provides Cabinet with an overview of the amendments that will need to be made to the Corporate Plan 2023-2028 following a review that took place during the 2025-26 year. The Council's Corporate Plan was endorsed by Council in 2023 and published thereafter. The plan has 5 wellbeing objectives which are long-term and set within the Sustainable Development Principles. Following a review, the 5 wellbeing objectives are judged as still relevant, fit for purpose and critical to improving the quality of life for our residents. To ensure the Council complies with the duties of the Wellbeing of Future Generations Act and associated statutory guidance, the performance and governance provisions which are framed within the context of the wellbeing duty and in the wellbeing of future generations. This sets out a legally binding common purpose for all public bodies subject to the Act to improve the social, economic, environmental and cultural well-being of Wales. It sets out 7 well-being goals which public bodies must work towards, including the 5 ways of working, which guide how public bodies should set out their well-being objectives. The recommendation is shown at 3.1 of the report that Cabinet endorses the amendments prior to its republication. I move.
Councillor Stanner. Councillor Amanda McConnell.
I'd like to second the report. I do have one question.
Of course.
Referring to wellbeing objectives number 4, enabling economy to grow. Our objective is to show strong alignment with placemaking, employment and business support. Can an officer comment on how each of these are aligned, please?
Williams.
Thanks, Councillor McConnell. So, the statistic kind of sitting behind this wellbeing objective are very positive for us, and they relate to sort of unemployment levels, economic activity and economic inactivity, and shows us to be in an improving position, in quite a good place compared to other authorities in the region and the Wales average. Just in terms of those things you mentioned, so there's no real single factor to that success. It's a combination of all of those things. So And you know, just a few of those. We have a great focus here on economic regeneration, employment support and international trade. All of those things are discretionary functions and would have been very, very easy for us to just stop doing to save money, but we haven't. The staff structure in place, with some really good quality staff, and those staff are very enthusiastic and driven in all of those areas. You as a Cabinet are very supportive of that function. And you know, the economic development function, regeneration function, as I said, it would have been very easy for us as an authority not to do those things. We've had UK SPF over the past 3 years, which has enabled us to link all of those things together. It's allowed us to offer funding support to local businesses, which has been fantastic. It's been a great take-up, you know, and that's made a difference. We've seen industry clusters forming. We've got some manufacturing growth and new roles in some of our blue chip indigenous companies. I won't name them because that would be unfair. We've had some great increase in start-up businesses and businesses diversifying. We support the Caerphilly Business Club. That's expanded and really successfully expanded to almost 1,000 members. I think a few years ago that was, you know, it was in double figures, not triple or 4 figures. So, you know, the Caerphilly Business Club has done some great work. With our support, the Business Club does things like direct business support, workforce development, sector-specific events, skills matching, business scale-up. So that's on the kind of economic support function. Place, we're very, very focused on trying to revive our town centres. It's not an easy task because obviously the world of retail has completely changed. We've certainly got to focus on town centres with our placemaking plans in place for all of our major towns now. Great partnership with Welsh Government Transforming Towns team, and we deliver lots of events in those town centres. Some of those are of national significance, like the Tour of Britain. All the others of local significance, and obviously we've got the Tour de France coming in 2027. So it's a combination of all of those things working together, but we shouldn't lose sight of the fact that this authority is committed to continue with employment support, economic regeneration, economic development, and when it could have easily kept that function.
Thanks, Mark. And just to add to that before I bring other questions in, obviously I've seen firsthand as Cabinet member since 2022 in terms of regeneration how well everybody is working together in terms of the employability team and our events and being out there in the public, not waiting for the public to come to us as such, going out to them in libraries, for instance, with recruitment events, as recently up in Rumney, working with the local MP up there, and ourselves were present, bringing people together. It's only by being out there and speaking to people and guiding them in some cases, but learning from them that we can get people back into employment. But also I know of some of our offices where unfortunately a factory goes bust or into liquidation, straight there offering our support, working with the Department of Work and Pensions, everybody working together. It's not the council, it's us as part of something. And I know I've seen some provisional sort of employment or economic inactivity or economic activity levels across the borough, which are improving. I just think that if we were to cut those things you've said that are discretionary, I mean, what would be the disadvantage for the wider economy and employment levels across the board? I think we're doing really well, but we need to keep the momentum up, obviously. Councillor Chris Morgan.
Okay, thank you. Employment levels are an indicator of how well the local economy is performing. Can an officer comment on what the latest employment levels are within the Caerphilly County Borough?
I'll give you the latest unemployment levels, which is by default, you can work out the flip side of that. And this is for residents aged 16 to 64, of which there are 111,000. And our unemployment level is 2.4%. That's based on ONS annual population survey. That's for the period October 24 to September 25, the latest. 2.4% unemployment for us against a Wales average of 4.7%. And within the Cardiff Capital Region 10 authorities, there's only one other local authority that outperforms us, and they are 2.2% unemployment. Ours is 2.4%. So a good picture.
I've actually got one more.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
Okay, back to my portfolio actually. Can an officer comment on the proposed 50% increase in the Cleaner Greener budget and whether the objective will be strengthened by this proposal?
Yes.
Thank you, Leader. Thank you for the question, Councillor Morgan. A 50% increase by default should mean improvement. Shouldn't need any more than that. But we will be increasing the number of teams. The money will be going directly into frontline services. We will be having one supervisor trying to manage these teams because it's now going to be a 2-year programme. Last year we did it on a little bit of a shoestring with regards to supervision because it was a 1-year programme. But this year we'll have a dedicated resource that can act as that conduit and liaison with the local board members to make sure that we're meeting their requirements of what they want to see improved within their communities. So hopefully you will see some enhancement there. And we were using approximately 13 teams last year. We're going up to 17 teams this year. So there will be a bigger presence out there as well. So I think it'll make a definite improvement over and above all of the positive feedback we've already had from what we've done this year.
Thanks, Marcus. In terms of that enabling our environment to be greener, and Chris's question, There was a very good discussion at the recent scrutiny committee when there was a review of the programme. I think one or two members asked about the sustainability of Cleaner and Greener going forward, but I'm sure Leanne can confirm this, but our budget is not just for this year, but factored in for the £2 million for next year as well. So I get it, members will be saying, all right, it's all very well having a great looking borough one year, but if you slash the funding, it'll soon be very much unloved. So this is about sustainability going forward. We don't want it to be good one minute, bad the next, and obviously it's incumbent on all councillors, as you mentioned there, Marcus, to highlight their own areas. They know their wards better than anybody else, to make sure we have an environment to be greener. So yeah, very positive step forward, I think, in terms of Cleaner and Greener, subject of course to the budget being passed next week. Okay, any further questions at all? No? No? I'll go to the vote.
Yeah. Thanks, Leader. Members, please vote on the recommendation within the report that you've just heard about. And the recommendation to review and publish the review of corporate plan has been unanimously approved. Thank you.
Thank you, Rob. The next item is the panel performance assessment report and the council's response, and I'll introduce this one. Okay, so the purpose of this report is to inform Cabinet of the findings of the panel performance assessment that took place in September 2025 and to propose the council's response. The Local Government and Elections Wales Act 2021 sets a duty on councils to make arrangements for an independent panel to assess the extent to which the council is meeting the performance requirements once within an electoral cycle. This is called the panel performance assessment. Performance requirements are defined as the extent to which a council is exercising its functions effectively, is using its resources economically, efficiently and effectively, and has effective governance in place for securing the above. The Council's PPA took place during the 23rd and 26th of September 2025, and the final report was received by the Council on the 2nd of December 2025 and can be found in Appendix 1. The overall conclusion of the panel was that the Council is effectively fulfilling its functions despite the challenging environment facing local government across Wales and the UK, marked by rising demand and significant funding gaps. Council leadership demonstrates a clear grasp of the scale of these challenges, and since 2023 has been driving a substantial transformation programme. This programme focuses on a process re-engineering, reducing costs, aligning services more closely with the community needs and expectations, adopting innovative ways of working and fostering a culture in which staff feel empowered and invested in delivering the Council's corporate wellbeing objectives and ambitious transformation agenda. Cabinet welcomes the panel performance assessment report and expresses its appreciation to the panel for providing an independent external view of how well the Council is meeting its performance requirements. Cabinet accepts and acknowledges the contents of the report, including the positive findings and the recommendations identified for further improvement. In response to the panel recommendations contained within the final report, Cabinet is required to identify actions that will take to increase the extent to which the meeting the performance requirements. Response and actions helped to deliver improvements can be found in Appendix 2. Cabinet is asked to note the findings of the PPA report and agree the Council's proposed response to the PPA. The Council will be asked to approve the response to the PPA. I move. Somebody prepared a second? Yeah. Councillor Leonard. Yeah. No, it's yourself, Leonard.
I'm more than happy to second this report, but before you go into questions, I just want to place on record my thanks to officers who got all of the information, all of the data to present in front of the panel, on top of their day job as well, so it's a big thank you from us.
Councillor Leonard, you're itching to come in.
Sorry,
It's all right, don't worry.
Yeah, I think we can all recognise positive feedback with regard to efficiency in working conditions and better communication within the local authority, and how we have across to our residents and how that is improving life for our residents as well, how we communicate with our residents. And I think this is a good example of teamwork across the board, so I'd just like to congratulate everybody.
Okay. Any further questions? I'll make a couple of observations, but I'm looking for some questions first, but if not, I'll bring Ed in first, and then we can have a think about what we want to say.
So you can have a think about what you want to say. Yeah, I think those of you that were at stand-up this morning will have heard my thoughts on this. As a new chief exec and as it panned out, a new leader-elect at that point, this was always going to be a pretty big gig, really, especially when you've got an entirely independent panel coming through the door to lift the bonnet and have a very, very thorough look at how you're operating as an organisation. I think historically governance has been a concern across Caerphilly in many moons gone by, so there's certainly added a little bit more of a kind of worry for us that this should go the right way. But I think instinctively, as a cabinet, as an exec team, a relatively new exec team at that point, kind of felt like we were heading in the right direction at least. And what's really pleasing, having kind of seen the final report, is that that's been rubber stamped and endorsed by this external panel. And actually this is a very, very strong response, a strong finding for us. The recommendations that we've been given, I think there are a few that are shared with other local authorities as well. So this is not just for Caerphilly, there are consistencies across the piece. But we're also talking about making some tweaks and some refinements. So it's become quite transformative, really. We know we're on the right path. We've had some expert suggestions as to how we can do things a little more, we can move things forward a little more swiftly, and we can start to kind of move the organisation from good to excellent. To have that played back by, as I say, a panel of peers, taking into consideration the higher expectations, the higher demand, the financial challenges that we're facing on a day-to-day basis. I don't think I could have asked for much more, really, when we went into this week. The team that helped corral the troops and get us ready for this particular assessment deserves some special credit, as do Cabinet and the wider members as well. There's a huge amount of people that have played a part in getting us to this particular point. And the emphasis now is us to deliver the action plan and really move us on to a very, very strong footing. So, yeah, cracking experience, although there were some sleepless nights in the build-up and during. So I'm very pleased to see the final report come back through, and now we're on to moving us in moving us forward into a slightly better position than we are in current.
Yeah, Mark S. Williams.
Yeah, just I think I touched on this morning in stand-up, but they're very experienced. Obviously, an ex-chief executive, a current chief executive, a deputy leader. I was interviewed in 3 sort of different scenarios by various members of the panel. They were very, very thorough. So you know, they turned some stones over. This wasn't light touch by any stretch of the imagination. So you know, we do need to be really pleased and really proud with the report and with their conclusions, because they were very thorough.
I'll bring Rob in before I ask a question. Rob.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to add as well, just from my perspective, I mean, I'd only been in post a few months at the time of this, so I suppose sort of entered it with a degree of apprehension. I'm pleased that Councillor Stenner has thanked and recognised all the work and preparation that went in by colleagues in advance, because this wasn't just a few days of the week in question. A lot of preparation and planning was done in advance. From where I'm sat, this report reads about as well as it could possibly read. An assessment of this nature, a team is always going to come in and find some things, areas for improvement, but in this particular case, it's language which is around build upon, further develop. As I say, reads about this as well as it can be. So again, just reflecting on the fact that I'd only been in post, we were sort of relatively fresh new coming together of executive leadership team, new relationships in a way and ways of working, but to read comments around strong visible leadership and ambitious sector leading transformation programme. Reflection as well by the panel across the whole workforce. They talked about an energised workforce embracing change. They referenced our resident-focused approach and obviously gave us some suggestion to build upon that. And then just bringing this sort of back to immediately within the centre of my own portfolio. They also spoke to the Youth Forum and talked about what a positive and a vehicle that was for engagement. So yeah, I think we should be delighted with the way this has been drafted and the way the whole process was conducted by colleagues and members alike. Thanks.
Thanks, Robert. I'd like to echo as well what Councillor said and yourself have said about officers, and with that in mind, I'd perhaps just like to ask a officer, I'm not sure which to direct this to, just about the nature of the independent panel, because, you know, often if we do a self-assessment report, we're criticised for marking our own homework and stuff like that. But as several people have already mentioned, this wasn't light touch, this wasn't a breeze where we just walk in and just answer a few questions and they give us a glowing report. I mean, it was 3.5 days of, well, it was, you know, 20 to 30 hours, you know, at least one in the office. So yeah, just a question about the independent panel and sort of how things went with them, really.
I think really well, leader. We were the WLJ got a responsibility to assist us in finding a panel, and as you'll be aware, we asked for some specific questions around our transformation programme as well. So the skill sets that were proposed to us came with that in mind, that they were going to have an ability to look at our economy, efficiency and effectiveness, but also to look at our transformation programme, because we specifically asked for that. So yeah, absolutely. Great set of individuals, as you said, as we explained. It needs to be ex-chief executive, a serving chief executive, a senior elected member from the Labour Authority, from voluntary third sector arrangements, and they were really selected. I think they got on really well with yourselves as cabinet. They worked really well with senior officers. They did put in a lot of work over there. Phenomenal amount of work, and it wasn't light touch by any stretch of the imagination. And as you say, numerous officers across the council were also involved in interviews and panels as well.
Yeah, I mean, from a cabinet point of view, I mean, the whole cabinet was interviewed. I was perhaps interviewed more probably, which is fine. As the then acting leader in difficult circumstances, as the chief executive pointed out. But obviously they were interviews with unions, with backbench Labour members, backbench Plaid members, leader of the Independents, leader of Plaid Cymru. So it wasn't just a cabinet sort of, you know, gloss, you know, let's talk about how brilliant we are. I mean, you had a sort of critical, constructive sort of audience, perhaps, in amongst all that mix. So perhaps, how was that kind of reflected in the report?
I think they would have triangulated all those responses, so they had a lot of data provided to them prior to them coming into the week. So they looked at all of our reports, our corporate plans, our strategies, etc. And then they were in here during the week requesting more information. So as they were going down lines of inquiry, they were asking for more information from officers about particular things. And then they were asking for additional interviews as well throughout that week. So bringing all that together, the data, the interviews, the lines of inquiry, we took them to a few additional site visits. They spoke to additional people. So they tailored their week to what they were looking at, and their lines of inquiry went off in different directions. But and then they brought all that together within the report, so you'll see that they've themed the report against. Extrapolate that information. First the positives, because it was extremely positive. I think we reflected on that, and then those few areas for improvement where we could take things further.
Yeah. So Leonard?
Yeah, question. With regards to impact on services and residents, do you feel the analysis reflects local needs and community priorities with regards to equality, accessibility and inclusion? Do you think that these considerations have been addressed?
Certainly looked at, they looked at our corporate plan, which is to on your report, which is based upon a lot of community assessment and what's known as a local assessment of wellbeing, which we undertake every 5 years. So that looks at our community data, our demographics, so they really all information. They also looked at things like our strategic quality plan throughout that week and interviews with our qualities officers. So they were certainly aware of all that information on our communities. Our resident makeup, our demography, and also any sort of particular issues we've got with them. So we certainly have them.
So that. Just a sort of final thought, I suppose. Obviously, it's a pleasing report, and I said in the stand-up following Chief Exec what he said earlier on. It's always nice to have a good report, and it is pleasing. Obviously, the council's effectively fulfilling its functions and various things like that. There were some recommendations. As I said earlier on, it's not about just seeing those recommendations and for them to be on a shelf for a year. I mean, I think in terms of bringing the backbenchers more involved, that doesn't come without its challenges, admittedly, but one of the first things we've done since then is bring a sort of task and finish group together for surplus places across the borough. You know, trying to bring members across the borough involved in the scrutiny process. I certainly meet alongside Councillor Andrews and Councillor Shane Cook, the leader and the leaders of the opposition. But the offer is out there. You know, no problem whatsoever. Being open and honest and having those sort of detailed briefings, that's no problem. And I think we're, as a cabinet, open to ideas from across the chamber. You know, this is not a closed shop. You know, we are here and we are listening, and we want to bring people with us. And in terms of transformation, we had 2 walkthroughs last year. The invite went out to all councillors. Not all councillors turned up, but I know there will be further invites going out as well to walk through the agile space there, ask officers questions. You know, everything is on the board there. You know, so no secrets and things like that. So yeah, I take this opportunity to appeal to all councillors to, you know, come along and, you know, approach us, and if you've got a good idea, no idea is a stupid idea, kind of thing like that. So yeah, very pleasing on the whole, and something I think that we can really build on, and we must build on those recommendations, and I'm sure we will. Okay, in that case, Rob, just for noting this one, yeah.
No, I think we'll take a vote on this one if we.
Okay,
okay, yeah, we'll vote then, because we are agreeing the response to the assessment. Thank you. So members, the polls there before you. Please could you vote on the 2 recommendations within the report. And those recommendations are unanimously approved, Leader. Thank you.
Thank you, Rob. Okay, now we'll do our final item. That's the advertising and sponsorship policy. And Nigel, welcome to the meeting. Okay.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
For yourself to introduce the report.
Right, thank you, Leader. The purpose of the report is to seek endorsement from Cabinet for the Council's proposed advertising and sponsorship policy. In summary, implementing an advertising and sponsorship policy is important for a public sector body such as Caerphilly CBC in order to provide a clear and concise framework for seeking, accepting, managing advertising and sponsorship opportunities. A robust and fit-purpose policy ensures all staff have the appropriate measures established to protect themselves and the Council. By implementing this policy, the Council is balancing our commercial needs and opportunities with our public duties, fostering positive relationships with businesses whilst upholding the community standards. The policy aims to uphold the Council's reputation and corporate identity, support strategies, priorities and community engagement, maximise income generation while ensuring legal and ethical compliance, promoting transparency, consistency and accountability, and finally, preventing conflicts of interest. I move the recommendation asking Cabinet to endorse the proposed advertising and sponsorship policy. Thank you.
Nigel, and to second, Councillor Philippa Leonard.
Yeah, I'm happy to second the report. Got 2 questions. I don't know.
The officer light at the moment.
He's on his way down now. Can we run ahead of Shredded on me, so he's on his way.
Wait, should we wait?
You can try us out if you like.
Yeah.
That's from Mark S. Williams. He's looking nervous over there.
Make it difficult, Philippa.
So firstly, how does the policy address data protection when advertising involves customer data? Sorry Mark, my second question.
Ask me on a sport.
From a friend, I got a phone. And the second one is, are there restrictions on advertising products such as alcohol, gambling, fast food or vaping? That lies within my portfolio and I just thought I'd ask those questions.
I don't think we'll be.
Should we wait?
I don't think we'll be asking Embassy to sponsor anything for us, or
They are just quite contentious within for our residents with regards to vaping.
It's our supply chain that this is targeted at. So we don't buy any of those products anyway. So.
All right, okay.
So for the purpose of those watching at home, we're waiting for an officer. Okay, Ian?
Right, Mark's done brilliantly in your absence, Ian.
I did one question for you, Ian.
Oh, thank you very much, Mark.
Kept it for you.
Over to yourself, Philippa Leonard.
Yeah, how does the policy address data protection when advertising involves customer data?
In terms of the policy, obviously I've run it by our information governance unit, and they were comfortable in terms of the community, the wording that's in the policy around data protection and governance. Again, it's around the common sense approach to this arrangement and the policy, and any information we would put in the public domain, we would always do a test on the information that we do publish, whether it's commercially sensitive and various other aspects. So Carl is within my team and I have regular contact with Carl on matters such as this, so I manage it via that way.
Second question.
Wow.
Or first one.
Well, I don't know, I did ask, are there restrictions on advertising products such as alcohol, gambling, fast food or vaping? But Mark said this is within the corporation, we wouldn't be...
So we're targeting our supply chain.
Yeah,
we don't buy any of those products anyway, really. So.
No, we wouldn't. And also we've been quite clear in terms of the policy about what's permitted and what's not permitted. And certainly those type of products we wouldn't be looking to permit as part of the sponsorship.
So Chris Morgan.
Thanks. We've run many events across the borough. Does the sponsorship cover the costs of these events?
Well, I suppose the main one is the Caerphilly 10K. The sponsor's been in place for that since we started. That sponsor's actually withdrawing after this year, but the level of sponsorship in no way covers the cost of the event. So we need to try and increase the amount of sponsorship we get from that event. Other events, such as the Sport Awards, are generally covered, the costs are generally covered by a combination of sponsors and sale of tables to clubs attending.
Another part of that, yeah, sure. Does the borough gain more because of these events?
Absolutely. The Caerphilly 10K it's in Welsh Athletics calendar. If we ever took that away now, we wouldn't get it back again. It wouldn't come back in the calendar because the calendar is so congested. So, and just in terms of the footfall in Caerphilly on that day, yeah, we gain massively economically, and reputationally.
Councillor Leonard.
Yeah, if a member of the public has got any concerns regarding any advertisements or sponsors, how would they raise concerns with us?
We will, in terms of from a procurement perspective, we would manage the sponsorship and advertising. In terms of if there's any particular complaints raised, we have got a complaints process, but we'd also got correspondence as well in terms information in terms of where they could write to us to clarify certain information. So again, that's something we could possibly build on in terms of any communication that goes out and how we manage that. No, that's it.
Thanks, so Leonard. Yeah, just a last sort of follow-on from what Councillor Morgan has said, and I suppose there's a wider point you've answered in, Mark, but in terms of events such as the Caerphilly 10K, whilst the council itself doesn't receive the income, in fact, it actually costs us to put on the event. You know, we have got, when we're talking about previous reports about the economy, employment, you know, activity and economic unemployment, whilst we can't quantify to the nearest person employed and what have you, I shudder to think, had we made a decision to cancel the events programme to, I don't know, save 150,000 or whatever it might be, what the real massive knock-on negative events would be for the whole of the borough. And whilst it does cost, you know, us in Caerphilly to hold these events, it would be a complete and utter false economy, you know, to be cut in or getting shot of our events programme. And slightly off topic there, but never one to not miss an opportunity to talk up the events and what the joy that they bring. Okay.
I suppose, Leader, that if we had cancelled the programme, we probably wouldn't have attracted the Tour de France. So.
Absolutely. Okay. No further questions then. Case, Rob.
Thanks, Leader. Members, could you vote on whether or not you wish to adopt the advertising and sponsorship policy before you? And you've answered that in the affirmative, and indeed unanimously. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you, Rob. Okay, that's the last item on the agenda. Thank you, councillors. Thank you, officers, for attending. Therefore, declare the meeting closed.